The kitchen was warm with the scent of cinnamon and freshly brewed coffee, the kind of morning that should have felt like home. But lately, even the sun shining through the windows felt intrusive, as if mocking the coldness growing inside my house. I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes for my son, Armin, 17, tall for his age and lately so very far away from me. "Don't burn them," he said curtly, not even looking up from his phone. He sat at the counter, scrolling. His lips curled in a smirk I used to think was cute. Now it looked familiar, too familiar, like his grandfather's. I forced a smile. "Wouldn't dream of it, sweetheart." He barely acknowledged me. The same boy who used to follow me around the kitchen, who once cried when I went to work late, now acted like I was just the woman who did his laundry. I turned away before he could see the sadness in my eyes. I wouldn't let him. It wasn't always like this. When my husband Rafik died in a car accident 12 years ago, Armin was just 5. He didn't understand grief. He only knew that Daddy wasn't coming home anymore. And in the silence that followed Rafik's death, I held our world together with 2 jobs, sleepless nights, and a heart stitched with resolve. I worked during the day at a law office and cleaned offices at night. I missed school plays, parent-teacher meetings, birthdays, but not because I didn't care. I missed them so Armin could have a future, so he wouldn't feel the absence of a father in his pocket or his stomach, even if he felt it in his heart. But what I didn't account for was the shadow that crept in from Rafik's family, specifically his father. The great Jamal Siddiqui, a real estate mogul, a man who never liked me, never approved of his son marrying a middle-class girl who brought nothing but a smile to the table. After Rafik's death, Jamal appeared like a ghost wrapped in gold, expensive suits, polished shoes, and that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. He offered to take care of Armin. "It's the least I can do for my grandson," he said, while staring straight at me like I was a beggar at the gate. I refused, of course. Armin was my son, but Jamal was persistent. He'd send gifts, toys, clothes, and later phones, bikes, gaming consoles. Things I couldn't afford. That's when the cracks began. At first, it was small things. "Grandpa says I shouldn't be eating this processed food." "Grandpa got me a better phone than the one you said was too expensive." And then, "Grandpa says you're just too proud to accept help." Each word was a dagger coated in sugar. I tried to talk to him, tried to explain that pride wasn't the problem, it was dignity. But what does a teenager know of dignity when the world offers them everything they want wrapped in a designer box? I remember one evening when he came home late, eyes glittering with excitement. "Grandpa took me to the country club today. I met real businessmen. He says I have potential, not like..." He stopped himself. "Not like what?" I asked, my voice barely holding itself together. "Not like someone who works as a secretary and cleans floors at night." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just nodded and turned back to the sink, biting my tongue until it bled. The day everything shifted. It was a Saturday. Armin had been staying over at his grandfather's for the week. I had finally gotten a weekend off after 6 months. I cleaned the house, cooked his favorite meal, even hung up his childhood photos on the wall. Desperate reminders of who we used to be. When he walked in, he looked annoyed. "What is all this?" he muttered, eyeing the photo wall. I smiled nervously, just trying to bring back some memories. He scoffed. "Yeah, well, I'm not 5 anymore." Then he dropped his duffel bag on the floor. A brand new bag, Louis Vuitton, custom initials on the side. "Where'd you get that, Grandpa?" He said. "It's time I started dressing the part." "The part of what?" I asked quietly. "A man," he snapped. I folded my arms. "Armin, you're not a man just because someone buys you things. Being a man is about responsibility, kindness, work." He cut me off. "Yeah, well, maybe if you knew how to act like an adult instead of clinging to your pride, you'd have gotten further in life." My heart stopped. What did you say? He glared at me, voice rising. I said maybe if you were more like Grandpa, ambitious, respected, successful, I wouldn't be embarrassed every time someone asks what my mother does. Then came the words that would echo in my bones for weeks. You'll never measure up to my FIL. For a moment, the world stood still. He didn't even realize what he'd said. He meant grandfather, of course, but called him my FIL, as if I were the outsider. As if his loyalty belonged to that man now. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, dead in the eyes, and said softly, "Will he pay your bills?" He blinked. What? The days after the argument passed in a tense silence. Armin didn't apologize. I didn't ask him to. We became strangers living under the same roof, exchanging glances, not words. He'd come in late, smelling like expensive cologne and entitlement. He barely ate what I cooked, and when he did, it was in silence. Every time I passed by his room, I heard him on the phone with his grandfather. Yeah, she just doesn't get it. No, I told her I'm not interested in living like her. I'm coming over this weekend. Can you pick me up? Not Mom. Not home. Not even a hint of guilt. I let it slide. I told myself he was a teenager, lost influence. But a part of me, the woman inside the mother, began to resent him. How easily he dismissed my sacrifices. How comfortable he became disrespecting the hands that fed him. It was mid-autumn when everything came to a head. The wind had begun to carry that dry, golden crispness, brushing the leaves across the porch like nature herself was trying to sweep away the past. I had just come home from work. My manager had given me a promotion, small but meaningful. I stopped by Armin's favorite bakery to grab the cheesecake he loved, hoping maybe this time we could sit down like old times. Laugh, talk, fix what was broken. I walked into the house, balancing the cake and the key. Inside, the living room was dim. Armin was on the couch with his grandfather, Jamal, in my house. He looked up with that cold smile that never touched his eyes. Armin didn't even greet me. "Good evening," I said stiffly, placing the cake on the table. Jamal barely nodded. "Didn't think you'd be home so early. You're usually at one of your jobs." The emphasis on jobs cut deep. Armin laughed, that was it. I turned toward him. "Armin, can I speak to you for a moment?" He sighed like I was the one inconveniencing him. "What now, Mom?" "In private." He got up with exaggerated groaning. We went to the hallway, just far enough from Jamal, but close enough for raised voices to carry. "Why is he here?" I asked. "He's helping me with my university application." Armin said, "He knows people, real people." I frowned. "You don't even want to discuss that with me? I thought we were doing this together." He scoffed. "What can you do for me, really? You think the admissions office cares that my mom knows how to type legal letters and mop floors?" I blinked. "You think you've done everything, but you haven't done enough. You've just done the bare minimum to survive." I stepped back. "Is that really how you see me?" He looked at me like I was a burden. "I don't want to end up like you, Mom, tired, poor, alone." That's when the anger rose, not just from pain, but from clarity. I saw the child I raised, and I saw the monster I allowed someone else to create. "You don't want to end up like me," I said, barely containing my voice. "The woman who worked 3 jobs to keep you warm. The woman who buried her husband and raised a son who now looks down on her." He crossed his arms. "I just want more. And you think you'll get that from him? Your grandfather who wouldn't even acknowledge your existence until your father died. He's the only one who sees my potential. And I'm the one who paid your school fees, packed your lunches, stayed up all night when you were sick, fought the world just to see you smile." He looked at me, eyes narrowing, jaw clenching. Then he shouted, loud, raw, filled with venom, "You'll never measure up to my FIL." Time stopped again. Not because of the words, but because of what they meant. Not my grandfather, not even my dad's dad. He called him my FIL, That slip of the tongue, or maybe it wasn't a slip at all, struck me harder than anything else he had ever said. It was like being erased from his life, from his family, from his identity. Like I had become a placeholder. The day after I threw them out, the silence in the house was deafening, but it was finally mine again. No more slamming doors, no more being ignored in my own kitchen, no more cold stares from a son I once carried in my arms through endless nights of fever and nightmares. It hurt, God, it hurt more than anything I've ever known, but the pain also came with clarity. This wasn't about losing a son. It was about finding me again. I began with the small things. I removed Jamal's expensive gifts from Armin's room, the gold-plated headphones, the designer sneakers, the imported watch, all packed in a box and shoved into the attic. I replaced the framed photos with art, bright, hopeful pieces, paintings I used to love before my world became about survival. I took my time cooking for myself, not rushing to impress a teenager who judged me. I watched movies I liked, slept without waiting for the front door to open. I rediscovered silence, and it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like peace, but I didn't just sit still. I got to work. At the law firm, I started speaking up, taking initiative, staying late, learning. I enrolled in a part-time online certification in paralegal studies, using my weekends and nights. I was tired, yes, but this time, I wasn't tired from chasing love. I was tired from chasing freedom. Within 6 months, I moved from legal secretary to junior case coordinator. Not a major title, but to me, it felt like climbing Everest. My boss noticed. Clients began remembering my name. And most importantly, I remembered my worth. And then Armin came back. It was nearly a year since the last fight. I hadn't heard from him, not a message, not a call. His grandfather had taken him in, paid for his college, bought him a car, paraded him at business functions like a golden trophy. I heard whispers through mutual friends that Jamal had promised to leave part of his real estate business to Armin. The perfect heir. But Jamal had one flaw. His love came with chains. He expected loyalty, not love. Performance, not mistakes. And when Armin finally stumbled, as all young men do, the golden floor vanished. It happened on a Thursday evening. I was preparing to leave work when the receptionist called me. "There's someone here to see you." I stepped out of my office. And there he was, Armin, thinner, paler, eyes darker than I remembered. "Hi, Mom." His voice cracked just slightly. I stood there, unsure of how to feel. Part of me wanted to run to him, hug him, take him home, but another part remembered the coldness. The words, the echo of "you'll never measure up." "What do you want?" I asked calmly. He blinked, surprised by my tone. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't invite him in, I waited. "I dropped out of the business program," he said. "It wasn't for me and Grandpa. He didn't take it well. Of course he didn't. I moved out. Where are you staying? With a friend for now." I nodded. Silence. Then he looked up, truly looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my son, not Jamal's shadow. "I'm sorry," just 2 words, 2 small, heavy, broken words. The seasons shifted again, summer had come and gone, and with autumn's return, the wind carried memories. Not regrets, but echoes, and I had learned not to chase echoes anymore. I had a new rhythm now, wake at 6. Morning walk, black coffee on the balcony, a full-time paralegal job. Evenings spent in peace, reading, journaling, watching documentaries I'd never had time for. No chaos, no shouting, just me. Armin had found a job at a small bookstore near the university. Humble work, but honest. He'd rented a tiny studio apartment with cracked walls and a stubborn window that wouldn't close, and yet he called it his own. He'd send me pictures sometimes of the breakfast he cooked, of his books, of sunsets. He didn't ask me for money. He asked for my time, a coffee here, a dinner there. He'd offer to pay. Sometimes I let him. It was awkward at first, like speaking to a stranger who looked like someone I used to know. But slowly, I began to recognize the boy I had raised, the one who cried when his goldfish died, who made birthday cards with macaroni, who believed I was the strongest woman in the world. And then came the day I knew he truly understood. It was a Sunday. I'd invited him over for lunch. Nothing fancy, just home. Made biryani and raita, the kind of meal he used to beg for when he was younger. He came early, flowers in hand. Not necessary, I said, smiling despite myself. I know, he replied. That's why I brought them. We sat on the porch after eating, warm mugs of chai in our hands. The breeze was soft, the silence between us was no longer heavy. Mom, he began, can I tell you something? I nodded. I've been going to therapy. I blinked. Really? He nodded. At school, they offer free sessions. I've been working through some things, Dad's death, the way Grandpa manipulated me, the things I said to you. My heart squeezed, not in pain, but in pride. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued. I think I already got that the day you gave me that envelope, but I want you to know I get it now, everything, the sacrifices, the silence, the strength. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. You know, Grandpa tried to contact me last week. Oh, he said I should stop acting like a peasant and come home. He even offered me a new car. I said no. A soft smile played on my lips. Why? Because this time I want to earn what I have, like you did. I felt it then, not just pride. Not just closure, but healing, complete, quiet healing. And in that moment I realized something else too. Love isn't free. It always costs something. For me, it cost years of exhaustion, isolation, and heartbreak. For him, it cost ego, comfort, and disillusionment. But in the end, it brought us here, to the truth, to the real version of love, not the easy kind bought with gifts or status, but the kind fought for in silence, rebuilt in pain, and carried with grace. As the sky turned gold and shadows stretched across the garden, Armin reached into his bag and pulled out an envelope. What's this? I asked. My first proper paycheck, he said, handing me the torn envelope. I want you to have it. I frowned. No, Armin, please, he interrupted, his voice steady. Let me start paying back the debt I owe you. I touched his hand gently. You don't owe me money, Armin. You owe me a life well lived. He looked down, eyes glassy. I'm trying, he whispered. I know, I said, squeezing his fingers, and I see it.